Good afternoon, everyone in India. Good morning in Australia. Though at the moment, we haven't got friends from there as yet. And somewhere midday for friends in Europe. Uh, Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Uh, the South Asia Human Rights Documentation Center is very privileged to host this webinar this afternoon. After the problem that arose on the 8th of this month, we had to go to a much more secure platform, which is this. And also we could do so only with the help of Dr. Mohan and his Center for Legal Change, which have facilitated this new platform for our webinar. And so I need to thank him doubly, once for accepting to be a panelist, and two for coming to my rescue when I was at sea in terms of the technicalities of doing this again on another platform. It's really good to read the book. I got a copy of the book after customs made me run around for some time, because obviously they don't like human rights books or any books per se. And so after giving me a run around, I finally had the book delivered. And it really was a read. It really was a read because I'm quite familiar with the Commission on Human Rights, having attended every year without exception from 1992 to 2006. I attended the first meeting of the council and then decided that that was not my cup of tea. And also, secondly, that I could use extranet to listen to it. And thirdly, that the government of India started in a big way. So, main book. And so the Human Rights Council clearly is not something that, apart from my reading, had a physical presence apart from his first meeting. I need to mention a special word of thanks by way of introduction to John Pache. Apart from writing this fabulous book, at a personal level, I need to thank him. In 1993, at the World Conference on Human Rights, I had a problem. I was not being registered as South Asia Human Rights Documentation Center, thanks to the opposition of you know who. And there was a certain Indian diplomat at the UN then on a secondment, whose name I shall mention, but her political affiliations are now very clear because she's been one of the signatories amongst the Indian diplomats who signed missive to the Canadian Prime Minister saying, please do not interfere in.
You're breaking up, you know.
Can't hear you.
I think he's gone off. The rest of us can hear each other.
Yes.
He's probably gone off. He'll come back. He'll come back. No, he's still on. He's still on.
It's in the UN.
Yeah.
Still on, but can you hear me?
We lost you in
Can
the
you hear
middle
me
for
now?
about. We lost you for about 3 minutes. We lost you for about.
Basically this Indian diplomat who has now decided to sign a missive to the Canadian Prime Minister not to interfere in India's affairs with a few others, attempted to block my registration. I went to John, whom I did not know at that point of time. It was just my second year at the commission, saying that I was a good guy, and I took a sheaf of papers to prove I was a good guy. And John had me admitted. The story doesn't end here. I'll just conclude with one line here. 2 weeks later, before going to the actual Vienna meeting, the foreign secretary invited me for a meeting. So I took Swami Abhivesh and Ratna Kapoor, who's a feminist lawyer, with me. And he said, how did you get in finally? Meaning that he had instigated the attempt to block my presence. So I told him, well, you're not the only one who has friends. I do have them too in different places. And that we decided to become friends after that. It's a pity that he died when he was not far into the job of the National Security Advisor. He was a major, great leap forward amongst the people who followed him. But the book, coming back to the book, it clearly is new and important because the governments over the years have tried to reduce the role of civil society. And John very clearly, again and again, emphasizes how important this role of civil society is. And this attempt at reduction of the role of civil society continues manifold in the new Human Rights Council, not so very new, but definitely manifold. Secondly, something that has always been a gripe for NGOs, for the Secretariat of the High Commissioner's Office, for the Commission on Human Rights and the Subcommission, was the budgetary constraints. In fact, many years ago, I'm talking about around 2006, I heard from a senior Ford Foundation official that the was equivalent to the budget of the UN for human rights. This was in the year 2006, and it may have increased by then because they've started a lot of other initiatives which are there. For many procedures could not be set up only because there wasn't adequate funding from the system, because there was clearly not a felt necessity for this. But it's not only the felt necessity of the UN system, it's also how the states operate. Because I was one of the key actors in the Bangkok meeting. In fact, I was the South Asian representative on the Asia Pacific NGO facilitating team, which came with the Bangkok NGO declaration. I could see how the Asian gang, and I will call them nothing less than that, of governments, in cahoots with some wonderful worthies like Syria then, Cuba, of course our good neighbor Pakistan, our other good neighbor China, and at that point Indonesia, which was under Suharto, tried to do a football tackle on anything going forward on the human rights agenda. The major issue that was brought by civil society from Bangkok, and thanks to the UN system also went up to New York, was the whole issue of the Asian values debate being put on the back burner, getting short shrift by the NGO, Asian NGO Declaration of Bangkok. And I must thank John for referring to it in the book, but not just in the book, in a number of other articles that he's written elsewhere. Because it marked the coming of age of Asian NGOs. And this is where John's latest suggestion in the book and elsewhere about creating a regional grouping of NGOs as something subsidiary to the work of the Human Rights Council is very, very welcome. We saw how much import it had for us in our interventions in Vienna, because I am not boastful, but we were the best organized in Vienna, from accommodation speaking time, to the kind of notes that we made, and there was no single prima donnas. Everything was decided well in advance of who would we make on behalf of the team, what statement. And that was a major reason for our success. The old issues of the daily newspaper that was brought out in Vienna would attest to our effectiveness, and the number of governmental delegations that sought appointments with us to have a meet on different issues agitating government during the Vienna conference. John again points out that the role of governments is not what it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. There's a new actor on the block, which is the corporate sector. The corporate sector now is extremely powerful and is involved in doing some good for human rights and some terrible things for human rights. And while Kofi Annan had talked about the Global Compact, obviously it did not go very far, and we still see a situation like where the High Court in the Supreme Court in the UK has taken a very advanced, very welcome step on the issue of the oil spills in Nigeria, and this is very very welcome. The speaking time in the UPR for civil society was always a problem. But now with COVID, if you look at the agenda for the March 21 session, it's clear that it's even further truncated, and the number of participants and the manner of participation is clearly problematic. So this is something that NGOs need to take a much more thing, and friendly governments need to put in their voices on this. I have quite a big shopping list. I won't go on and on. I perhaps will use some of my shopping list at the very end when I do the conclusion. But I would like to make one suggestion, which John does also and has explicitly done in an article elsewhere, where there must be some discussion on the veto power of these permanent members of the Security Council on human rights and humanitarian law issues. There must be some discussion, because they can't be blocking any advancement on the human rights agenda in the most powerful body of the UN system. I will let him speak on other issues which I have not touched upon. As I told you, I have the shopping list that I prepared after reading both the book and his various articles, and they were a delight. And I've already circulated many of the articles and the chapters of the book that OUP kindly gave me in advance, as well as the panelists who have the full book. I must also thank OUP for this great initiative before I conclude, because this is the first actual record of the Commission since its inception. I have all the summary records. I have the attendance list. My colleagues, why are you keeping all this junk? You don't dip into it except once a year. Why do you keep all this paper? I think now I may not need it, thanks to the fact that John has delved deep into it and put it all together in one book, and that compendium will be now the book that I shall dip into, instead of looking for tons of summary records of the various commissions. I'll conclude here. Thank you very much to John for agreeing to this, and it's been a delight to have this. I have not mentioned that you did lots of brilliant missions for the UN in Lebanon, Indonesia, tons of other countries which I don't even recall immediately. But you've clearly been a beacon, and you continue to train a whole range of young activists, most principally by this wonderful Australian program, the Diplomacy Training Program, which operates out of the University of New South Wales Law Faculty and has meetings all over the country. I organized 2 or 3 in the early 2000s, but after that the government made a block on all meetings, just not mine, but every other meeting. So there have been meetings in Sri Lanka and there have been meetings in Nepal, but we in India, it's a question of the Indian bureaucratic saying, apply, no reply. That's what. So we haven't been able to get a meeting in there. But John's been great with young people joining this. And as he says in the book itself, that this was the book emanated out of an interaction with young people who clearly did not have an overall picture of what the commission meant and what an important role it played to advance the international human rights agenda and put the spotlight on some of the creepy crawly governments. Thank you very much. Having said that, I will now invite John to tell us about the book and also some of the key issues that he's touched upon there. Thank you very much.